Hi and welcome to the next tutorial. In today's lesson we'll learn how to recreate this cool looking looping animated background using Adobe Illustrator and After Effects. So anyways guys, let's jump in. So the first thing that I have here is I've just downloaded this landing page from freepik.com, and all I've done is I've opened the Illustrator file inside of Illustrator. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we get rid of the layers that we don't need and we separate all the layers that we do need. So for example, all of this stuff, you know, for example, the animals and the houses and the smoke and the sun and the birds, everything that you want to animate, you should put in its own layer. So to do that is quite easy. If you want to delete something, all you have to do is just click on the layer and then you can just press the little trash can icon at the bottom and that will delete that layer for you. Also, all you have to do is just expand all of these sections, and for example, I can see that this layer is the bird here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press on this create new layer button and then just drag the birds to those new layers. Now this will be all separated for each of these items, and you just have to go through the entire document and make sure that everything that you want to animate is on a separate layer. So anyways, I'll just quickly run through this and do it really fast. So once you're happy with everything, then what you need to do is you need to start to rename all your layers. Now you can do this here in Illustrator or you can do it in After Effects, so wherever you like to do it in. And then the last thing that you need to do is you need to come over here and go to Window, Artboard, and what we're going to do is we're just going to change these settings to 1920 by 1080, and I'm just going to press OK. And so now that makes the artboard bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of those components. I'm going to hold shift and I'm just going to draw it up a little bit bigger. So it doesn't have to go all the way to the edge, and we'll fix that up in After Effects. Anyways, once you're happy with your file, then you can press save. So just come over here and save as an Adobe Illustrator file. So now that we're in After Effects, the first thing that we need to do is we need to import our composition. We can do that by right clicking and then going to import file. So then you need to import your file, and what you want to do is you want to import it as a composition, and I'm just going to press OK. And so now if you double click your little nature reserve, you can see what we have here, and we need to fix this up a little bit. If your composition settings are not 1920 by 1080, then make sure you change that here. But what we are going to be doing is we're first just going to be scaling this up so that we can get rid of all these things on the sides. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new null object, and then I'm just going to parent all of these things to the null object, just like that. And then I'm going to press S for scale, and I'm just going to bring it up slightly until it looks something like that. So there we have, there's our first little section. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we rename all of our layers. So I'm just going to do this pretty quickly now. Cool. So now the first thing that we need to do is we're just going to animate the deer and these trees. So we're going to find that layer down here, and I've renamed it deer and trees. Now the easiest way to do this is just to get the puppet pin tool, and what we need to do is we just need to place down some anchor points. So these are the things that you don't want to actually move. So I'm just going to place some right at the bottom of the trees. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place what I do want to move right at the top. And so now if I move one over, you can see what's actually happening, but it's still moving there a little bit. So what I want to do is I just want to put down some more anchor points there, and maybe I'll do the same for this side as well, just so the trees, they don't move that much. So I'm just going to put these points right at the top, just so it looks like that. And so now we're gonna start the animation. So we're gonna make sure that we're at the start of the animation, and then we're just gonna move them all one way. So either to the left or to the right. Now you don't want to move it too much. So I'm just gonna move this over slightly. And if you find that the rest of the trees are still moving, just add another one of these puppet pin tools so that it doesn't move. And then anyway, the gist of this is to just move forward in time, let's say 5 seconds, and then let's move it back the other way. So I'm just gonna move that over. And you'll see what happens here. So now you've got those 2 points for the trees, and that's going to be the basis of this animation. And so now if we have a look at what that looks like, you can see that the trees are now moving, and that looks pretty cool. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to make this loop. So what we need to do is I'm just going to press U on my keyboard for all of my keyframes, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight all of them and make them easy ease keyframes by going to easy ease. Now what we need to do is on these puppet pins with these two values over here, we need to create an expression. So I'm just going to hold Alt on my keyboard and then click on the stopwatch, and then I'm going to write this expression loop out. I'm going to press tab to make that even quicker, and then in quotations just write ping pong. So now if I unclick on the timeline and if I play this, you will see that now it's going to loop and it's going to go back and forwards. Now I've only done it on this one over here, so not much is actually happening, but you can see that the last one, this one over here, this is the one that's looping. So anyway, so what we need to do is now we need to copy that expression. And so if you right click and go copy expression only, and then select all of the other puppet pin positions, just like that. Now if we go to edit, we can say, we can put paste. And what will happen is that will copy that loop out expression to all those other puppet pins. And so we're gonna do the same for these three as well. So we'll go to edit, paste, and there we have it. And so now if we just keep scrubbing through, you can see that the trees will just constantly loop forever. And so now we're gonna do the same thing for the deers. So now I'm just gonna zoom in and I'm just gonna put a puppet pin on the deer's head, and then I'm gonna start it right at the start, and I'm going to move the head over slightly, and then I'll move forward in time to 5 seconds, and then I'll just bring the head back down. And so I'll do the same for the other deer. So I'll start from down there, and then I'll bring it back, and I'll bring it back maybe something like that. So now you've got those two deer heads, you know, moving slightly, and that's giving it a little bit more motion. So we're gonna do the same thing again. I'm just gonna press U on my keyboard to pull up all those new keyframes. I'm just gonna right click, easy ease, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to paste that loop out expression. So now those deer heads will loop in and loop out constantly. So that's looking pretty good. So now we're gonna move to the next thing, which is the birds. So the first thing that we're gonna do here is we're just gonna select all the birds, and then we are going to create a new pre-composition. So I'm just gonna call this birds, okay? And so now if I double click on that, you can see that I've got all my birds in here. And so what I wanna do is on each of the birds, now they're very, very small. So the more and more you zoom in, you know, the more pixelated it's going to be. So now what we're going to do here with the birds are, we need to make sure that we rotate this guy, and this guy. So we need to find out where they are on our in our layers. So I can see here that these three are the birds that are flying that way, and these three are the birds that are flying this way. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna come over to layer, transform, and we're gonna just say flip horizontally. And now once we've done that, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab these birds and I'm just gonna kind of put them back to where they sort of were. So now we've got all the birds flying in one single direction. And so I'm gonna start on this one because it's the biggest one here. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna animate the flapping wings motion. And so again, what we need to use is the puppet pin tool. So I'm just gonna come over here and grab the puppet pin. And I'm gonna put one in the middle just to lock it down, and then one on the ends of the wings. So I'm gonna start here at the first keyframe. I'm gonna make sure that the wings are quite high. And then I'm gonna move forward in time, maybe about half a second. And then I'll drop the wings down to something like that. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press U on my keyboard and I'm going to write the expression again. So loop out, open bracket, ping pong. So now that's for one wing. So what we need to do is do the same for the other wing. So I'm just going to easy ease that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press on that puppet pin and then go to edit, paste, and that will paste that expression in there as well. And so you can see what is actually happening. Now the wings are moving. And if you find that they're moving too fast, you can always change your duration here. Or if it's too slow, if you want to bring it down to maybe about 10 frames, something like that, just highlight them and then drag them down to whatever you see fit. So now you can see that the bird is now flapping nicely. And so what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that process for the remainder of the birds here. Now to save time, what we can do is now I've got those two birds which are flapping, I can kind of maybe even delete the other birds and then just duplicate those birds that we have the animation on and then just move them around wherever. And if you want to change some of the durations and so they're not all doing the same thing, you can, edit that as well just by changing the duration of the flapping. So for example, this one, maybe we'll set it to flap a little bit slower, and you can see there that that one's flapping a little bit slower. If you want to set one to flap a little bit faster, you can now move that over. So you want to make sure that the birds are all different, because otherwise it's just going to look a little bit, too standard. Cool. So now we've got our birds moving, and so now we can go back to our landscape and you can see how it looks with the birds on the screen. So as we scrub through, you can see that they're flying. So now what we're going to do is we're going to animate the birds. So I'm just going to press P on my keyboard for position, and then I'm going to set a keyframe. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the birds off the screen. I'm going to move forward in time to probably about, I don't know, maybe 12 seconds. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the birds on the other side of the screen until they're off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight both those keyframes, make them easy ease keyframes, and then I'm going to add the loop out expression. So just loop out. And this time we don't want ping pong. So this time the birds will fly over, and once they get to the other side, then the animation repeats again. And so you can see how it's going there. So if you want to make it a bit faster, you can just bring back the end keyframe. So anyways, cool. So now once you're happy with that, we can now move on to the next step. So the next step is to now animate the sun. So we're going to have a simple animation for the sun, and all we want it to do is just rotate around from left to right. So now to animate the sun, all we need to do is find the sun layer, press R on our keyboard for rotation, and if we move this, you can see that the sun will rotate around that center anchor point. So if you don't want it to go off the screen, what you need to do is you're gonna have to get the pan behind tool and then just move this anchor point down slightly. And so now if you preview that, you can see that the sun has a much smaller path to follow. So I'm just gonna move it down even more. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to animate that. So I'm gonna start it at 0. And then I'm gonna move forward to maybe about 20 seconds. And then I'm just going to rotate it until it's off the screen. So now the next thing that we need to do for that is easy ease. And then we also have to hold Alt, click on the stopwatch, and then just write loop out. And so now we've got the sun that will start from there, and then it will rise, and then it will come over here, and then the process will repeat again. And that's looking pretty cool. So the next thing that we have to worry about is we have to worry about the smoke. So it's a bit hard to see the smoke, but we've got on the chimney stacks, we've got some smoke there. So what we're gonna do is we're just going to animate each of these individually. So the first one that I'm going to find here is I'm just going to find which smoke this one is. And so this one is this one here. And I'm just going to put the smoke behind the house. Now all I'm going to do is look for an effect called turbulent displace. And then I'm going to drag it to that smoke. And then I just need to change some of the settings. So we're going to really bring down the amount to probably about maybe 25. We're going to change it to turbulent smoother, and we're also going to change the size probably to about something like 10. And now for the animation to loop, what we need to do is we need to alt click on the evolution stopwatch and write time times 100. And so now if you've done that correctly, you can see that now the smoke is animating. Okay, so now once we've got our house with the animated smoke, all we need to do is just copy that animation. So we're gonna press Control C on this effect. We're gonna highlight all the other smoke layers. So not that one and not that one. Make sure that they are underneath the house layer. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna press Control V, and that will paste them all in. And so now if I look at any of these layers, you can see that I have the smoke here with the expression still there. So now if I preview that, you can see that all the smoke is actually moving. Now it's a little bit hard to see, but if I just scrub through, you can see that there's a little bit of movement there. So anyway, so that's looking pretty good. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to animate the clouds, and the clouds are pretty simple to do. What we are going to do is just find out where the clouds are. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to make another pre-composition. So I'm just going to call that one clouds, and then I'm just going to double click that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all the layers, and then I'm just going to bring it down slightly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set on all the stopwatches, and now I'm going to move forward in time to probably about 10 seconds. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the X values. So this one will move this way. All right, the next one will move that way, and the final one will move that way. So I'm just going to right click, easy ease, and I'm also going to add the LoopOut expression to all of these. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a LoopOut expression to this, and this time we want it to ping pong. And so now I'm just going to copy that expression only, and then highlight the other two, and then just go and edit, paste. And so now that will copy the expression. And so now if I loop through that, you can see that the clouds will move, and then they will come back, and etc. So now that's looking pretty good. We can go back to our main composition. The next thing that we're going to add is we're just going to add some color correction here. So what we are going to do is we're going to create a new adjustment layer. So we're going to right click and then go create new adjustment layer. So now that we've created our new adjustment layer, what you want to do is you want to search for an effect called brightness and contrast and just drag that to the adjustment layer. And what we're going to do is we're going to mimic the sun. So for example, we're going to come over here and set our stopwatch on brightness, and we're going to lower the brightness for when the sun is not visible to, let's say, -25. We're going to track the sun, and the sun is probably at the highest point around there. So we're going to reset that to 0, and then we're going to bring it back down once the sun disappears again to -25. And so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to press U on my keyboard, and I'm going to make those easy E's, and then I'm going to hold Alt, click the stopwatch, and then just write loop out. And so now once that happens, the sun will come back in, it will go bright, and then it will finish up. So now the final thing that we can do here is we can add some noise. So if we come over here and we add noise, and we really just put maybe like 2% noise, or maybe even 3%, something like that, it will just make the animation have a bit more life. Then the final thing that we can do is go back to the null and just do a simple scale in animation. So what we are going to do is I'm just going to click on the stopwatch, all right, and then I'm going to move forward in time, let's say 10 seconds, and I'm just going to bring that into, let's say, maybe 127. And so once I've got that, I can just easy ease that, and then I can hold Alt, press on the stopwatch, and this time we want the loop out ping pong transition. And so now that will go in and out, and I'm just gonna put that in there. Cool. And so now we've got like a small little camera movement that is kind of zooming in as well, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and it's looking pretty cool. But anyways, the whole point of this is to create something that will loop on for a while. Now my timeline is 1 minute, but I could set it to, let's say, 10 minutes, and that will constantly loop around. So anyways, that's about it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time.